So a lot of high achievers believe pressure is the price of greatness. So they push harder, they control more, they stay consistently on. But what if the relentless hustle they depend on is actually the thing draining their clarity, creativity, and leadership? Today, we're talking about why grace feels so counterintuitive in a culture addicted to pressure, and how the practice of Aikido reveals a completely different path to resilience, performance, and sustainable success. Paul Crick is back with us today, and he's the creator of the Grace Framework. He's a former consultant at PwC and IBM, and someone who took lessons from leadership psychology, neuroscience, creativity, and martial arts to challenge one of the biggest myths in modern success culture. And so that is that force creates greatness. So Paul's work helps leaders move from pressure to presence using grace as a practical alternative to burnout, over control, and performance-driven exhaustion. And what makes this conversation fascinating is how deeply the practice of Aikido shaped that philosophy. So instead of fighting force with more force, learning how to redirect energy entirely. And so, Paul, welcome back. It's really, really great to have you here. I'm excited to learn more about this. I'm big into all of energy work, and I've never actually heard of Aikido, so I'm excited for this conversation. How are you doing today?
Me, I'm good. Thanks for having me back, Lisa. It's good to be here.
It's so good to see you. So let's start with the fact that so many successful people, they appear to be thriving, but underneath it all, they're exhausted and they're unhappy and they're burnt out. Why does achievement stop feeling so fulfilling for so many high performers?
Well, I think it's because, first of all, they think it's a destination. It's that trap of when I get to, when my company reaches this size, when I achieve this particular milestone, when I sell out, when I get my first big order, when I win this trophy, win this medal, complete whatever it is I think I've got to complete, then I'll feel great. And the challenge is, and you see it so many times, there's so many examples of people doing that. And the moment they get the thing that they wanted, they arrive at what they think is the destination. They kind of go, well, that was underwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
Why? That wasn't what I expected. And actually, I'm very depleted now. And and therefore, what am I shooting for? And what was that all about? And that all seems like not a waste of time, but a lot of effort for something that turned out not to be what I thought it was.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's that aspect of it. There's another aspect of it, which is our conditioning. So we're sold this story of work hard, work really, really hard, and keep pushing and keep driving and don't give up. And in contexts where you have to win at all costs, which is probably sport. In the moment of the game, the idea is win at all costs within the rules. And even in the elite military, it's win at all costs within the rules of engagement. Um, then there's expectations that's the story you tell yourself. That's what you do to achieve. But there comes a point where we run out of steam. Our ability, when we put ourselves under that kind of pressure, our ability to think, our ability to observe, our ability to be present just simply diminishes.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, the harder we try, the less effect we have eventually. And I remember working really, really hard. In one of my first assignments at PricewaterhouseCoopers, we were working for, I can say the client because it was 7 years ago now, but it was for Samsung. And we were working across Korea, Germany, France, the UK, and the US, so literally half the globe. And because of the hours, we would be doing all sorts of stupid stuff hours wise. I mean, it was extremely hard work. You'd do a full day, then you'd hop on a plane, you transport, you get to the hotel, you collapse. Your first meeting would be at like 8 a.m. in the morning, but you've got an hour's time difference, which really messes with your head and your
Mm-hmm.
body. put yourself through that long enough and your body starts to say, hang on a minute, you're not listening to me. This is too much. I can't cope.
When I finally had a break, and then suddenly, like, I lost my entire mojo and I couldn't do anything because I was exhausted, like beyond exhausted.
Mm,
But at no time did I ever feel like fully achieved. And I always thought to myself, why
mm,
am I not feeling good about this? Why do I need more to feel good? So it was an interesting experience to kind of see
mm.
that side of like just more is not more.
No, definitely not. And our human body and our human condition is such that, we're not built just to keep going. We have different energy profiles. Some people are morning people. Some people can go all day. I can be like an energizer battery. I can keep going, but even then there comes a point where I'll time out and just go enough. Whereas other people, it's kind of like, no, I can only do like 3 hours a day. That's what I do. I mean, I do great stuff in 3 hours a day, but then I need to go and recover. Um, so it's and people are designed in different ways in terms of energy profile as to what they can and can't do. And we assume one size fits all when it comes to work or working, and that being at your desk or being at your job for longer is better.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. At what point does pressure become identity?
Um, Pressure becomes identity when you ask the question, who am I when I'm not under pressure?
Right.
If I am not under pressure, if I am not busy, who do I become? Because if we don't do that, that creates space. And in that space, what do we do? Well, we're then left with our thoughts. We're left with ourselves. And for some people, for whatever reason, that's not comfortable. We experience internal feelings. Our interoception kicks in, and we go, "Oh, what's that feeling? I don't like that." I tell you what, if I get busy, that feeling, I'll either ignore it or that feeling, or I can subjugate it, suppress it. I'll just get busy. I remember a conversation with our landlords when we first moved into our house that we're in now. Um, we were having a glass of wine, getting to know each other a little bit, and we were just talking about, and they're lawyers, seasoned lawyers, in London, and they were talking about the rates of work and this, that, and the other. And I asked the question of the lady, and I said, well, what would happen if you slowed down? And she said, oh, I couldn't possibly do that. I'd go mad. And that was sort of that kind of, I'd have to spend time with myself
Hmm.
conversation that said, that's not comfortable.
Yeah, so many people feel this guilt when they rest or slow down, especially the high performers. I mean, it's happened to me. It's a Monday,
Well,
and yeah, rest is
rest is,
rest is
if you
required.
talk to elite, sorry, if you talk to elite athletes, they'll say the most important part of training is rest.
Yeah, I think the hardest muscle to train is the one between your ears.
Oh, always. Yeah, and the idea of rest is seen as lazy, if you rest, because people think it's a passive act. People think, oh, you're just lying there in bed and you're doing nothing. When you're asleep, it's kind of like, well, you're lazy, you're not doing anything, and yet rest is not rest is active. Various internal processes are happening in terms of restoring the body and cleansing out the rubbish in the brain and cleansing the gut and all that kind of stuff. That's really, really important. So if you don't take the time to rest, then what happens? Your system gets clogged up. And what happens when our system clogs up? Well, it eventually comes to a standstill.
Yeah. So something I found interesting about your work is that you say that grace is actually counterintuitive. Can you explain that statement?
So when you say the word grace, three things come to mind. Or, one of the three options. First, people think of, oh well, that's religious, isn't it? Isn't that religion? Don't we just sit around and pray or hold hands and say prayers. So that's the first thing that comes to mind. So how can that possibly have anything to do with high performance? That doesn't make sense. The second thing that comes is, that's a bit feminine, isn't it? You know, grace is a word that tends to be associated with feminine energy or feminine gender. Wires are hard hitting, hard pushing, no nonsense, take no prisoners, in pursuit of my goal, male, be interested in anything that could possibly be tainted with that brush. And then I think the other thing is, it's just seen as soft. You know, it's, you know, we know it when we see it, but what we forget is what it takes to produce grace, that effortless flow. If you look at any of the training, you look at the ballet training. My sister's a former professional ballet dancer, and now teaches. And when she used to dance professionally, the training was brutal in terms of repetition and hours, and just simply teaching the body to move in certain ways with such precision. But it's the precision that produces the grace, and therefore people view it as soft when it's anything but. You know, some of the hardest work you do is to cultivate grace. But once you have it, then that effortlessness, it's like learning a piece of music, and then you get to a place where you can play it and you don't have to think about it. You can play it and you can have a conversation. You know, it's literally that kind of grace that we're talking about. It's like you don't have to think through it's unconscious competence. You know, if you think of that model, it's I've developed enough competence in this that I have the skills that allow me to flow and not think about, well, first I do this and then I do that and then I do this and I push and I strive and, oh God, I'm going to make a mistake and I need to do that. You know, none of that thinking's there. It's just out of the way. It's that idea of flow.
The embodiment piece. So why does the GRACE framework help leaders understand that traditional performance culture misses completely?
Because it provides, if you imagine it as a compass with 5 points on a compass, and each letter of grace sits on that, it gives you 5 ways of looking at where you are right now. So you can look at it and say, is it that is the difficulty I'm experiencing, or the tension I'm experiencing, or the exhaustion or the anxiety that's getting in the way of the thing I want to achieve, is that because I'm not grounded? So you look at that and you ask questions, and there's various techniques to figure out whether you're grounded or not, and then restore grounding. Is it because I've lost my resolve? I've lost my mojo, if for want of a term, or I've set goals that don't make sense. You know, they're either too big, or they're someone else's goals that have been handed to me, or they're the goals I think I should have, because if I don't follow those goals, then who am I and how am I going to be judged? Is it something I'm not accepting? You know, is it that I'm just not accepting that it's okay to rest? Is it that I'm not accepting someone in front of me? What am I not accepting about myself? What am I not accepting about the system that I'm part of, that's causing this disturbance? And then when I'm trying to create, how am I trying to create? Am I trying to create with force? Am I creating because I want to please someone else? Because those are very often 2 reasons why creating will not work. You know, I came from an environment where, you know, it was very much a copy paste environment. You know, it's like, oh, we put that over here, so let's copy paste that, put there, change all the logos, and go, we can do this for you. And it's kind of like, where's the creativity in that? The real creativity, the heart of creativity, the stuff that delves into our real humanness, the stuff that differentiates us in the world, and also makes us human, and therefore makes us part of the whole, as much as helping us stand out. And then there's that embodiment piece. How do we do the daily practice that starts to tame our inner critic, our imposter syndrome, because we're doing our daily practice, because we're writing our crappy first drafts consistently, because we're producing something and publishing, and because we are accepting that we're making this for us, not for other people. Then we get better at doing it, because the embodiment thing, it's like you're just doing the reps. It's like you want bigger muscles, go to the gym, do the reps. The more you do the reps and you do the cycle of strain and stress to train, but then rest and renewal, the more you do that cycle, the better you'll get, and you'll get the results you want. So by looking through those 5 different lenses, it gives you ways of thinking about, why am I unhappy? Why am I out of balance? Or why am I not getting the result I want to get? And why am I not achieving the level of performance I want to achieve? What's out of kilter? What's not working? And it's a thing that just helps you close the knowing doing gap. So this came from the idea of, I can in leadership, people will say, oh, one of the most important things in leadership is emotional intelligence. So I would teach people with flip charts and role plays and plenary discussions what emotional intelligence was, and they'd go back to work and then nothing had changed, because we didn't close that. That was the knowing piece, but the doing piece is the practice piece. It's doing the reps in the gym. But what do you do? If you unpack emotional intelligence and say, so how do you do that? People usually go quite quiet, because they have to think about, well, what is it I do? And they'll find they'll do a dozen different things in different ways, depending upon the context in which they find themselves in. And therefore the framework really helps them, and it gives some scaffolding to really think about, why am I not getting the performance I want? And then that scaffolding then supports taking steps to remedy or rectify whatever it is that's not in balance or not working right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to ask you about Aikido. And so, how did martial arts change your understanding of leadership and resilience? And how did you loop this into the formula? And tell us a little bit about Aikido, because I don't even know what it is. I've never heard of it.
So, unlike other martial arts, Aikido is a non-striking art, and it's a non-competitive art. So it's not like karate or taekwondo or judo. You don't go to the Olympics and compete. It's a practice. It is what it is. It's very, very effective. It's as effective as any of the other martial arts, and it literally means harmony, spirit, way. And it's about, how do you take the energy of someone else who is using that energy against you and redirect it to restore harmony? And how do you do that in a way that creates the minimum amount of damage? And how do you do it with love? So it is described as the art of peace, the art of love. And I really loved that. If you treat love as a disposition towards someone else, as opposed to the more romanticized view that gets portrayed by Hollywood
Right.
and stories. But if you treat it as a disposition that says, I love you, you work in a very different energy to, it's kind of like, well, you're just in front of me, and I'm indifferent. Or if you're pushing against me, if I meet that aggressive energy with the same level of aggression, you just get two forces that butt up against each other. And what persists resists. I'm sure the audience and you have heard that before. You keep pushing, and there's nothing happens. But if I move out of the way and let the energy pass, I can redirect it.
Right.
So that's the first thing I loved about it, was this idea of the art of peace, and the art of, because when you look at it, it looks like two people fighting, and they're not. It's actually a dance, and it's because it's a practice. Then you have to learn how to surrender as someone receiving a technique. You have to learn how to fall. So in order to fall, and fall safely, and fall without thinking, if someone, there's a couple of really high falls that you do that if you thought about them, you'd never do, or you'd think about it mid fall and you'd fall awkwardly, whereas you need the body just to do what the body does naturally without thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So it has a grace to it within that. So you have the art of peace, you have the idea of working in partnership, and this idea of a dance, so that the partners can help each other get better. So when you're falling, you learn to fall better. But by learning to fall better, you learn help the person to do their technique better. And therefore you get this raising of the bar and the standard all the time. You know, I fall better, you do your technique better. I relax more, you do your technique better. You know, and that's how it works, which is totally counterintuitive when you watch it. So there's just, as you get more and more into it, and I don't profess to be any kind of an expert. I've done it 8 years, so I know a little bit, and I know enough of it to know which bits I want to apply in my work
Right.
that apply very, very easily and are easy to take off the mat. Then I know enough to show people exercises that teach them to experience physically what it's like when they push back, and
Mm-hmm.
then to teach them what it's like when they relax and they learn to redirect the energy. And it's really quite moving.
Can you give us a real life example of what that looks like and what that could look like in the workplace, for example?
So I was brought in to co-facilitate a group of senior leaders, a board of an engineering company. An engineering company that was doing 30 to 50 million in revenue, had 200 employees, and there's 5 directors were in an all-day session with us. And we took 2 wooden swords with us. They're called bokken. And bokken are actually deadly weapons. If used properly, you can kill someone with it quite easily, even though it's a blunt piece of wood. And the brief to us was, from the managing director, was, how do I encourage my staff, my fellow directors, to raise the standard and get more out of each other?
Mm.
That was the brief.
Okay.
So we demonstrated a simple routine with two swords. So my opponent raised a sword and struck me hard. I blocked it, moved out of the way, and then went for the return strike, obviously not striking my co-facilitator, because
Right.
they would have gone to hospital and I would have been in trouble. So we demonstrated that, and we said, okay, who wants to have a go? And everybody sort of looked at the floor, and we said, no one will get hurt. This is this isn't about being macho. This is demonstrate. This is about helping you learn a principle. Anyway, one of the guys it was their birthday. He said, oh, I'll have a go. And it's like, great. And so we put the swords down, and we said, right, face off to me, and I'm going to put my hand on your chest. And I said, is it okay if I put my hand here? And he said, yes. And I said, what you're going to experience is I'm going to push you. I'm going to push you gently. You're not going to fall over, but I am going to push you. And I did that really, really slowly. And within an instant, he went like that with his body. And I said, oh, that's interesting. What made you push back? And he said, well, you pushed me. And I said, oh, that's interesting. I said, yeah, but what made you push back? Well, I didn't want to give in. Okay. So that conversation went on, and then we took it to the swords. And the thing with the swords was, we stood at a distance where if the swords were swung, we couldn't hit each other. And I said, right, you move in a little closer, and what I want you to do is take what's called a ranging shot. A ranging shot is where you lower the sword so that the sword blade lands directly on my forehead. You can't miss, but you do it really, really slowly and really, really gently. I said, do you understand that? He said, yeah, no, I understand it. I said, are you ready? I said, nice and slow, nice and relaxed. All you got to do is raise the sword, lower it slowly so that it touches my forehead. Note I didn't say strikes my forehead. I just said touches it. Well, he did it, and the sword missed by about a foot.
Okay.
And I said, that's interesting. I said, why did you miss? He said, I didn't want to hurt you. And I said, oh, and is that how you deal with your colleagues?
Right.
Is it you, is you don't, are you not asking more of them because you're concerned about A, hurting them, and B, how you will be perceived?
Difficult conversations.
Oh, that's interesting. And I
Hmm.
said, right, now you know that, place the sword on my head. And he did. And I said to him, how does that feel different? He said, that's quite a relief, actually. That feels good. I said, good. It feels good to me too, because now I'm more present. I have a sword on my head and I'm wonder what's going to happen next. I said, I know I'm teacher, your student, but anything could happen. So I have to be really alive to what happens next. So your action is making me perform better.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. It is so
And I did,
interesting.
and I didn't have to do the right now swing full speed because we'd made the point. That was the point.
Hmm.
And we got them to practice in pairs to get that visceral experience of relief of what it feels like to miss and what it feels like to connect and to express
Hmm.
that. And it's so simple and so obvious. What I'm doing is I'm allowing an energy to come through. Now, if it came through full force, I would redirect it because I would step off the line and I would block it. And then I would strike back, because I want to return to harmony. And harmony is, really, we should be facing each other. But if he's going to kill me, assuming it was a real blade, then, I want to get to a place where I feel safe.
Right. Yeah, that is very interesting. Um, in terms of practicing it like every day in everyday scenarios, how can you tell if you're operating from a place of pressure, instead of that grounded presence?
Because your sympathetic nervous system will be activated. So you'll breathe higher in the
Mm,
chest. Um, you will be straining and striving. You won't be relaxed. So we have a thing, we have a number of sayings, um, which is, if you want power, relax. If you want speed, slow down. So
right.
if I try to throw someone in a circle, which is one way of redirecting energy, and I try to do it too fast, what happens is usually either my arms drag or my arms come into my body and I turn into a T-Rex and I've got short
Mhm.
arms. And if I'm a T-Rex, then I can't, the circle I make is not nearly as big as if my arms are out there at full stretch. So if I can imagine that I'm a bit like Spider-Man, I've got webs coming out of my fingers, and I just point at the wall and keep my arms at full length and go slower, the person will actually go round me quicker.
Mm,
And that's counterintuitive because people go, what? And this is why you hear things like the Navy SEALs say things like, slow is smooth, smooth is fast. And that's what that's all about. It's like slow it down, and when it becomes smooth, it becomes fast. And when we're in smooth territory, we're in the territory of grace.
yeah, it's like the releasing control. We've all tried to control a situation, and whenever I try to control a situation, I always feel like I'm met with such resistance from everywhere. And then you kind of take a step back and say, okay, I'm just gonna let this situation play out as it is. And suddenly it's so much easier in every way. And coming from that calm place, you're able to make such better decisions because they're not based on those high emotions and that anxiety that is building up inside of you.
Exactly. And you don't want tension when you're trying to be graceful,
Hmm.
in high performance. How many times do you watch athletes, particularly the hurdlers? Um, and you look, I forgot the name of the American athlete. She is just phenomenal. But you look at her flow and it's just relaxed. it's poetry in motion, and there's a lot of different athletes who do that in different events, that are at the top of their game. You watch Simone Biles cross a a gymnastics mat, and do what she does, and there's no strain in that at all.
Hmm. Yeah,
But
for
you
sure.
have to see the hours that went behind that to create that.
Hmm. Yeah, and a lot of it is like the mindset, mental work, like we talked about before. It's yeah, the calm under chaos, the ability to stay calm. The building's burning down, but you're calm and you're able to um figure out the best way to get out of that building. I'd love for you to offer the audience some simple grace practices that they can start using for someone out there who might feel like they are stuck in overdrive, in that hyper vigilant mode.
Easiest one: get outside, go for a walk, move. It's counterintuitive. People think, oh, I should go for a sleep. That'll make me feel better. Not always. What you want to do is you want to change your biochemistry, your internal biochemistry, because you're in fight flight, and it's like driving a racing car. If you keep your foot on the gas pedal hard for too long, it stays in the red zone. If it stays in the red zone forever, then not only will you run out of fuel, but your engine parts will burn out too. So
Hmm.
you need to change pace, change the environment, go outside. It's really about finding. So I was going to say it's about the process. Um, I have always struggled with finding an exercise that I like. I hate running. I admire people that can run and enjoy. I remember a friend of mine says, yeah, a friend of mine said to me, there comes a point, Paul, where yeah, the first few months of running are difficult, but then you get to that meditative state. And I went, no, I've never achieved that yet. And I'm a fair weather cyclist. As long as it's flat, it's sunny, it's breezy, and by the sea. In other words, Santa Monica Boulevard. Then I'm very happy to cycle from A to B. So, but anything else is just like hard work. But I found this practice, and the point is, you have to find what it is you love.
Hmm.
What is the process you love, and it's falling in love with that process, not the destination, but falling in the love with the process. You go, oh, this feels so great. I love doing this process. And if you can get to that, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's walking, if it's gardening, if it's um, being with your kids and playing with the kids, if it's being in a library and reading a book, if it's going hiking a mountain, it doesn't have to be strenuous. It just has to take you out of this place. So there's actually three states. People say, I think, and this idea comes from Dr. Pippa Grange, which is, we think that it's all about we perform or we rest. There's two states, but there isn't. There's a third state, which is renewal. And your renewal is when we go off and do something that's totally different to the thing that we're trying to achieve. So it's like
Hmm.
running a business and then going, you know what? I love doing slam poetry or going to slam poetry events. Yeah, that just renews me. Or my wife loves to sink her hands into the garden. She goes, if I'm outside and I'm doing gardening, my hands are in the soil, that renews me and I feel great. And you go, so there's this idea of high performance is not just performing, but it's also the willingness to rest and also to undertake activities that help you renew, that refill the fuel tank almost.
Hmm. For sure, for sure. I
Rest,
love that advice.
rest causes the engine to cool down. Renewal refills the gas tank.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think we all wait too long for that rest. We need to get better at being proactive about it and building it into our routines. I'm so guilty of it. And then, like you said at the beginning of this episode, when you're finally resting, and then you're too far gone. Your engine is about to blow up, and then all of a sudden you can't get back up for 3, 4 days. And that's really hard on the body.
I'm sure. I'm sure you've had the experience where you've gone to sleep and you go, oh, I'm going to go rest now, and you wake up in the morning and you go, did I sleep? Because I feel groggy.
Yeah.
You know what
Yeah, it's like being tired all
I
the
mean?
time.
Yeah, and that's when you know you're starting to be on the edge of burnout.
Hmm. So, Paul, before we wrap up today, I just wanted to ask you if you could leave high achievers with one message today about leadership, ambition, and grace, what would you say to them?
Wow. Gosh, that's a question.
No pressure.
I would, no pressure. I would, I would say leadership is not a role and it's not a title. Leadership is a practice. Grace is a helpful framework. It's not the only one, but grace is a helpful framework for you to cultivate a practice of noticing where you're out of balance, and then deciding, is it rest I need? Is it renewal I need? How can I build an embodied practice of rest and renewal into my high performance sprints? So I'm not anti high performance. There are times when we really do have to be on, and we actually do have to do that. But the more we can cultivate that and come from a place of stillness, stillness in motion, then and redirecting our energy in a way that is looks effortless. It isn't, because it takes time to cultivate it. But that would be a cultivated practice for rest and renewal. I hope that's helpful.
That is very, very helpful. Very helpful. Well, thank you so much for this really enlightening conversation, Paul. Tell everyone a little bit more about your work and what you do.
So in simple English, I help individuals and teams to work together better and to be brilliant. It's that simple.
Amazing, amazing. Well, thanks again for being here. I look forward to the next episode as you're continuing your series with us here. Um, I really think that leaders do need to stop forcing and using your method of, rest and renewal, um, being aware and in regulation and knowing how to stop fighting in the process is so powerful. I always found that the most powerful people in my eyes are the ones who don't say anything, but they walk in a room and they just have this energy about them. And then when they speak, everyone pays attention because they're coming from this place of grounded presence where they're so solid. It's like they're the biggest, most beautiful tree rooted in the ground, and they just have so much confidence behind what they're doing, no matter what it is. So great advice today. So thanks again for being here. And to everyone listening, we hope that you found a lot of value from this episode and that you will take some time to rest and recharge in whatever that might be for you, whether it's nature or martial arts or the arts, like we were talking about earlier. If you feel like this episode might resonate with someone that you know or help them, please send it to them as well. If you have any comments or questions for Paul, please leave them in the comments below, and we will make sure that we link his website in the show notes so you can have access to see what he does and more about his work in leadership. So thanks everyone for tuning in, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now, everyone.
Thanks, Lisa.